My name is Dave Zeke. I'm a regent at the University of Washington. I'm also chair of the Presidential Search Advisory Committee. Today I will be joined by my colleagues on the committee. Let me look down the line. At the far end of the table here to my left is Professor Louisa McKenzie, chair of the Faculty Senate, Mary Gresh, who runs advancement for the University of Washington, my colleague Regent Constance Rice, Alberto Pimentel, who's the founding partner of SP&A, the search firm that we chose after interviewing half a dozen earlier this year. And then at the end of the table there is Tyler Lang, who is secretary to the board and will sort of moderate this meeting. I note that we have sign interpreters and captioners for accessibility, so I would ask all speakers to speak at a measured pace and to allow time for transition from one speaker to another. I'd like to begin with a few words of context and then pass the baton to Alberto for further context. Selecting a university president is the most important responsibility of the Board of Regents. Many members of the UW community are familiar with searches for faculty members, for deans, and for even the provost, all of which include an open opportunity to meet and evaluate finalists in a more, if you will, open environment. Presidential searches are historically quite different. To find an excellent candidate, confidentiality is paramount. Nationwide, they're done in what's called a closed session. The board will interview them in person. This Presidential Search Advisory Committee's job is to forward perhaps 4 candidates to the board for consideration in those final interviews. In the last, I would also note, historically, the University of Washington in the last 40 or 50 years, all the presidents we have selected have been through this same process. And it's because virtually many of the candidates, in many cases virtually all of them, are sitting presidents elsewhere. And they're risking their position if they came here in an open platform, interviewed and didn't get the job, notified their entire university community. They'd prefer to be at the University of Washington, which is not great in their current situation if they're not successful. This means your input here is crucial. Your perspectives will shape the leadership profile that guides the Presidential Search Advisory Committee, that attracts candidates to the UW, and that helps shape the rubric by which the committee will evaluate potential candidates. When we develop this profile, we don't share all of it with the potential candidates because there are things we're kind of holding in reserve and looking for. We don't want to tip them off to every one of those things, so they'll just come in and repeat the profile back to us. Today, we're here to listen. We have been listening since earlier this summer. Because we're on a quarter system, many of the schools who are competing for the same candidates, there are perhaps a dozen other searches like ours for universities that look like us around the country. Many of them are on the semester system, so they were able to get to their listening sessions on campus a month or so before we were able to do that. So we've been working since the summer to get going. We have listened to senior leaders at the university. We've listened to the formal representatives of the student and faculty governments and to other stakeholder groups. We are listening to the results of the all-campus survey as well. Today, we're here to listen to your comments, and for that, we thank you. As you make your comments, I would ask you to consider several things. Not just what matters to you as an individual, to your group or your constituency, but what matters to the University of Washington as a whole. The president is the outward face of the university, responsible for representing the UW to stakeholders, to the legislature, to others across this state and across the world. But the president is also the ultimate executive officer and the face of the university inward. She works with faculty to administer academic operations. She or he works with faculty to administer academic operations, but also personally is responsible for choosing the leadership of large public serving areas such as UW Medicine. So some of the questions we would ask you to think about as you address us are, what sort of tone do you hope the new president will set? Which characteristics might help a new president to succeed at the UW? And which successes and challenges might a new president be unaware of if they don't know this part of the country or this particular university? With that, I'll turn this over to Alberto Pimentel for brief additional context, including the shifting landscape in higher education and specifically presidential searches, presidential duties, and the attractiveness of the presidency at the UW. Alberto.
Thank you. As many of you may have noticed by just reading the newspaper, especially those newspapers that are specifically geared towards higher education, publications, online sources, and so forth, the turnover rate among presidents and provosts and other senior leaders at universities is unprecedented. It is, and it's happening very, very quickly. In just the last 4 years, out of the 146 or so R1 institutions, almost 100 of them have brand new presidents, and over 100 have brand new provosts. The same can be said at the dean level, where the turnover is also quite evident. In addition to that, we have many more individuals now opting not to pursue administrative careers, and in particular be serving as president. Part of it is because of all the unrest, part of it is because of the shifting political landscape, part of it is just the attacks that a president is subject to. And so it's becoming a very competitive environment, more so than ever before, in order to find the right talent for a major university such as this. It's incredibly competitive, and as a result of that, we need to be very focused on what we're doing. We need to be very much intent on finding those individuals that really meet the needs of this institution. It is not a one-size-fits-all. And so while there are individuals that may be viable as president, to serve as president, we want to make sure that they're the appropriate fit for this institution, especially with the changing landscape, especially with the level of competition. Currently, there are over 14 presidential type searches that would be in direct competition, that are in direct competition with us. And it seems like new presidents are needed everywhere, almost on a weekly basis. Last week, Brandeis announced that their president's stepping down. The week before that, UC Riverside announced that their chancellor is retiring. The landscape is really in flux. And so focusing our attention in a way that is deliberate, a way that is specific to the needs of this university is going to be critical in order for us to find the right individual. In order to do so, it all starts here. And it starts with these kind of dialogues in order for us to understand, from your perspective, what we should be looking for, what works best for this institution, not only the professional qualities, but the interpersonal skills that the individual needs to have in order to be successful working with the faculty, with the staff, with students, as well as the broader community. So we're hoping today will provide an opportunity for us not only to listen to you, but to gain deeper insights on the type of individual that we should be seeking to recruit for this particular role. So we're looking very much forward to what you have to say today.
Thank you, Alberto. Now I'd like to turn it over to Tyler Lang, Secretary of the Board, to welcome each commenter in turn. Mr. Lang.
Thank you, Regent Zeke. Regent Zeke and Alberto have given you some, I think, additional pointers for things that might be helpful to the Search Advisory Committee and the board as they undertake this process. I think you can add your personal comments to that. I will call you up in the order in which you've signed up. I apologize, this may seem somewhat informal. If you really need to sit down, I think we can probably take the microphone off the stand if you're comfortable standing. That might be best for UW TV for the live stream. But let's begin with Professor Maya Sonnenberg.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm Maya Sonnenberg, the S. Wilson and Grace M. Pollock Professor in Creative Writing in the Department of English. I also represent my department at the Faculty Senate and serve on the Senate Executive Committee. I had a chance to meet some of you at the Executive Committee listening session. I understand I have a limited amount of time. You've heard already in your listening sessions many qualities desirable in our next president. I want to call your attention to two that are, or possibly three, that are of particular importance to me and to my department, the largest department in the College of Arts and Sciences. And those are the importance of undergraduate education here at UW and the central role of the arts and humanities. Sometimes in all the news about advances in engineering and the sciences, the glittery move of our athletic department to a big conference, and the incredibly important role that our hospitals and doctors play in our community, the university's role in educating undergraduates gets lost in the shuffle. I do not believe that anyone thinks it is unimportant, but there's a sense that it can sort of take care of itself. As you all know, this university currently enrolls more than 40,000 undergraduate students. Our next president must value undergraduate education and have experience themselves teaching undergraduate students. It will not serve this university if we have someone who only comes from a research background. Our next president must also support the arts and humanities at UW, understanding and acting on their true importance. Again, these are areas that tend to be thought of as service areas or a little extra glittery bauble, when really they're incredibly important. If this is to be a whole university, if this is to be a great university, if this is to be a great R1 university, these fields must be supported through the hiring of tenure-line faculty and through increased infrastructure for the particular types of teaching and research and creative work done by those faculty in these fields. An R1 university, I actually spent some time looking up the definition, is not limited to research in the sciences. As far back as the Paleolithic age, humans have been painting. We see these on cave walls. They were probably also singing, dancing, and reciting poetry, but obviously we don't have a record of that. And for probably just as long, humans have been discussing the various arts in language that they were making. Oh, look, your deer could look more like a deer on that wall or something. I don't know. These endeavors are absolutely central to what it means to be human. And here at UW, our next president must be committed to supporting them fully, not only trotting them out when someone wins a big prize, or thinking of their department as providing a service to other fields at the university. Finally, I want to briefly address the issue of AI. Of course, this is an important development, and I understand that UW is central in thinking about ways to utilize it. I really hope our next president will also take into consideration that AI is not good for everything, and to provide support for those among the faculty and students who have grave doubts about its ethical implications, and to make room for those views. And those are all my remarks. Again, thank you very much for all the work you're doing on this.
Thank you, Professor Sonnenberg. May I just ask if there are any questions from Search Advisory Committee members?
Good presentation, clear. I think we're good. Thank you,
Thank you.
Professor.
Next is Leila Corson. Okay. Then Patricia Loera, please.
Buenos dias.
Buenos
My name
dias.
is Patricia Loera. I'm an Associate Vice President for Strategic Partnerships and OMAD Compliance Officer at our Office of Minority Affairs and Diversity here at the University of Washington. That's a new role I'm in. Prior to that new role, I was, for 9 years, the Associate Vice President for College Access. And I'm also the daughter of Alfredo Loera and Maria Saldana, immigrants to this country from Mexico. My mother, my mother has 2 children who are UW, proud UW graduates. Myself, I graduated from UW Law School in 1993. My brother, Alfredo Loera, who's a physician assistant in the lower Yakima Valley. And we have a nephew. My nephew is here now as a senior, Alfredo Loera III. So I'm here today as an alum from our law school, as a family of immigrants where the University of Washington has helped a family achieve the American dream. And I'm also here as a staff member who has 3 points really to make. The first one really is our new president really needs to have a commitment and value that this is the University of Washington for Washington, We've been so privileged to have a president who has demonstrated that, where we're accessible to all of Washington. I myself am from Eastern Washington. I was born and raised in a small town called Sunnyside, Washington. Grew up as a migrant farm worker back and forth from Mexico. And the University of Washington sent staff to Sunnyside, Washington to recruit students to help us understand the process for admissions. And it's things like that, it's activity and investment like that that really helps keep the University of Washington accessible. Through the Office of Minority Affairs and Diversity, we actively look out for grant programs to help us serve 6th grade through 12th grade and two-year community colleges across the state of Washington. Our new president needs to continue to have a commitment to that. The second point I want to make is that our new president needs to value diversity, equity, and inclusion. In particular, during these times, these troubled times where we see organized attacks against DEI, and we need to have a president who's strategic, who understands that we shouldn't just play defense, we should actually be proactive and show what DEI, a commitment to DEI can really bring to this country, to our world, and we have a perfect place to do that here at the University of Washington, in our state of Washington. So be proactive about showing the why it matters. And indeed, this Board of Regents and this university and our faculty and staff have done that for many years. The Office of Minority Affairs and Diversity was created 56 years ago by our students, and the commitment that that president and the presidents after that have made to ensure that the University of Washington fulfills its mission, and part of its mission and values is diversity, equity, and inclusion. The third point I would like for you to consider in terms of our new president is, again, we've been fortunate to have a president who's been committed to community engagement. In 2019, we submitted an application and was approved to be a Carnegie Community Engagement classification, and we are now in the process of resubmitting that application for next year. And community engagement is so important. I see this in my role as a College Access Associate Vice President. We partner with 146 local schools, 6th grade through 12th grade. We partner with 19 community colleges from across the state of Washington. We partner with a lot of youth services, youth-serving nonprofits, helping them come on, spend a day with us at the UW, come and visit UW classrooms and understand what the UW is. Oftentimes it's through these community engagement programs that it's the first time young students and families actually set foot on this campus. So those are the 3 points. Continue to make this a university for Washington because it is accessible for families, continues to keep the American dream alive, a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and continuing our commitment to community engagement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Are there any questions? No, thank you. Okay, Lindy Rubadiri Mujugira, I think, is not here till 11 a.m., so we may hear those in the audience and then pause and hear from her. Gabriel Kennedy Gibbons, please.
Good morning, and I want to thank you so much. Can we hear me now? Perfect. For having this opportunity to hear from students. That really means a lot, especially holding it in person on campus, so I appreciate that. I don't have a prepared statement for you today. Instead, I just want to speak from my heart because a couple years ago, when I was deciding what university to attend, I was really drawn to the University of Washington because we are a leader in the environment. We've got programs all over the world, we've got research, we have innovation, which is amazing, and that's absolutely something to celebrate. But I need to be honest with you. It feels very strange to be a student at a university that's actively burning fossil fuels to heat the lab spaces and classrooms of the professors who are learning and teaching about the dangers of burning fossil fuels. And I know that you are all very smart, educated people. You understand the need for rapid decarbonization at UW, and I appreciate your support in that. So that brings us to this amazing opportunity that you all have in selecting University of Washington's next president, to look for a candidate who is committed to the goal of decarbonization at UW. And look, I know that this project is expensive, but waiting 10 years is not going to make it any cheaper. And as a matter of fact, it's actually going to be more expensive environmentally, financially, and in terms of UW's public image and looking hypocritical. So I urge you, as you're reviewing candidates, ask them if they're aware of the decarbonization project at UW and what they're willing to do to commit to moving that project forward quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions?
I appreciate your commitment to this issue. One of the things that's inspiring to those of us who work here or serve here is the passion of students for various things, including decarbonization. So I hear you, duly noted, taking notes, but I appreciate your commitment to this issue, David.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Professor McKenzie, question? No? Okay, great. So this is the moment where we turn it to the room, to anyone else in the room who would like to comment. I can see a couple of people who haven't commented, and Professor Huppert, do you want to say anything? Yeah, please. Yeah, come on up. We'll continue the sustainability theme.
Thank you. My name is Marilyn Ostergen. I work in the sustainability office. I also happen to be third generation Husky. My grandfather and mother both graduated from the UW. I have a nephew who's graduating from the UW. I also have 3 degrees from the UW, a bachelor's, master's, and a PhD. And I've oriented my work towards sustainability because that feels like such an important, meaningful thing to work on. And yeah, my hope is that we choose a president who has the courage to face up to the magnitude of the issues we face, not just climate change, but also biodiversity loss and all the ways that we're facing a really gloomy future. So I just want to be sure that that's on the agenda for our president. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Anyone else? So Regent Zeke, I would suggest that we pause the listening session and reconvene at 11 a.m. if the student who couldn't be here till then arrives.
Noted, agreed. We're adjourned for 25 or 30 minutes and hope that student will show up and we'll take his or her comments.
Thank you for attending.
Thank you.
Okay, we're live, Regent Zeke. Thank you for your patience to members of the Search Advisory Committee and members and people wishing to comment in the audience. So the last person on the list today is Lindy Rubadiri Mujugira. So please come up and adjust the microphone and offer your comments.
All right. Thank you so much, Search Committee, for all this great work you're doing and involving the entire population and community across the university. This is so great. And thank you for waiting for me, too. So one thought I had was our current president was very relatable in terms of her connection to different groups in the community. And, dealt with a lot of challenges that came across her path, but did it with such, people felt her humanity in the way she dealt with these problems and challenges that we had. She also made us feel like there was an all for one and one for all type of way in which we dealt with the challenges we had on campus, and we shared all the joys and challenges through her tenure. I'm wondering how you will ensure that the person who is brought on board as the UW president has those characteristics, that they don't feel so far up there in leadership. That is not to say that's how our leaders are, but that she or he makes sure that they are relatable and are in touch with the groups and make us feel like one force. Because we're living in a season where there's a lot of groupiness happening, and it would be nice to have someone that actually tries to unite everyone and gets all our common strengths and interests on hand. So just wondering how you're going to enable that process to determine that kind of characteristic in the person who we hire.
So, thank you. Are there any questions, or would you like to make a comment, Regent Zeke? I have one.
We have heard this comment before, similar things. It's a difficult thing to assess one's humility and humanity in an interview situation, but it is something that we're looking for. The other way we have to get at that is not just interviewing these candidates, but also talking to people who are on their campuses or in their workplace to ascertain just these factors. So the things that you're raising are things that are on our radar. You're emphasizing that, and that builds the momentum for us looking for these qualities. So we are going to be looking for those both in interviews and in other investigation that we do of them in their present workplaces. So thank you for your comments. Regent Rice.
Thank you.
One question. You're a student, correct?
No, actually, I'm a staff member. So I'm a director of one of our programs on the UW campus, our MESA program, Math, Engineering, Science Achievement Program, which is a state program housed at the UW. And so the work that I do also reaches out to the rest of the state, because I oversee a lot of the directors in the colleges and school districts that run our program. So I kind of have that broad, outward-looking piece for what UW represents, you know, in terms of out there, and then also internally as a director who's also worked in the college system with the College of Engineering as well, so have worked with students and staff who work with those students. So with different layers of impact to students, I have a heart for students, and so I do worry that, you know, they also, you know, because even though they don't necessarily have day-to-day contact with, you know, folks in leadership, they feel the culture that is established on campus. So it's great that they also have someone who bring that along to make them feel more at home on the campus, because every campus has its own branding, and we want to also just give a message out there for those who would want to come to the UW to know, hey, it's a welcoming place. You're going to find support and all sorts of resources that are available. But we deal with a lot of students who are first generation to college, so when they come here, it's so intimidating, not knowing where to start. So it's great that we have people in place that are ready to say, hey, you're welcome, you belong. We're not just accommodating you, but you belong here. And so if we can have that culture right from the get-go as they walk in the door. We used to have at the college that I worked in previously something called the no wrong door policy, meaning that if anyone knocked on your door, even if they were in the wrong office, they would be helped to either walk over to the right place or be sent over. So having that kind of atmosphere is always so great.
Thank you. My son is a product of Mesa.
Oh, really?
Yes, so
thank
you so much for your work.
Oh,
Yes.
great to hear. Would love to keep communication with him and let him come and, you know, impact our work some more. So thank you for that comment. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have to say your language was particularly helpful, I
Oh,
think, in
great.
shaping what might come into the final profile around being a unifying force.
Awesome.
I think the committee's heard pretty strongly that they want someone who's curious about the communities at the UW, and interested in learning and building those relationships. So I appreciate that very much.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for all you're doing, and I wish you all the best in the process of getting
Good.
us on.
Thank you.
Interested.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I think that concludes the session. Thank you.
Thank you.